Welcome back after lunch. Now we will request Dr. Ashish Lele to make a presentation on what NCL does with industry and what are the collaborative possibilities that he perceives. He has a full team here. He has a flight to catch, so I have requested him to make his presentation, and then we will keep in touch with him later on. Over to you, Ashish.
Thank you, Sudhandra. Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Sudhandra, and thank you, Sir Chairman, for letting me go ahead. Purpose is to just introduce you to NCL. You probably have heard of NCL, but you don't necessarily know what we do inside. As I said in my earlier session talk, that our outreach is not spectacularly good. So I thought this is a good opportunity for me to introduce my lab to you. Next slide, please. So the lab started on 3rd of January 1950. We are a 72-year-old lab. The mandate of the lab is a very simple sentence that is written there. It is enshrined in the foyer of our main building. It simply says that the purpose of this lab is to advance knowledge and apply chemical science for the good of the people. But we think this is a very deep sentence, because there are three things in this purpose that we feel are very, very important. One is to advance knowledge, and we believe that is important because you really cannot develop globally competitive technologies if you are not working at the frontiers of science. And therefore, the advancement of knowledge is critical to us, and we have therefore an active PhD program where our students basically are engaged into this part of the activity. The second is translational research, which is applying what we know as science, translating that science into technology is the application part. And the final is the why are we doing this, and the is really simply put for the good of the people. That's a very deep sentence, but there are many aspects to it which I'll cover as we go ahead. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the vision is to really is become India's what we say go-to R&D organization in the chemicals and allied sciences area, but particularly for Indian chemical industry. We are a publicly funded laboratory. Our stakeholders are people in India, and therefore idea is to have Indian chemical companies feel that NCL is the go-to lab in order to develop technologies with them, co-develop with them or license from them. But our vision is to make sure that whatever we do is globally benchmarked. It's differentiated in terms of having global patents, and also increasingly more and more sustainable technologies. Converting that vision into mission is basically, what we ultimately want to deliver is a technology. It could be a product technology or a process technology. Along the way, we develop intellectual property so that our technologies are well protected. And oftentimes, we also provide knowledge as a service, R&D as a service to industry. The second important part, and again, this is not very easy to do, is to synergize, you can call it basic research and applied research. We call it curiosity driven research and technology focused programs. To be able to balance the two, because if I am a scientist, I have a choice to do both, and I can do only one or I can do the other. What is really required is to make sure that the balance is proper and the synergy between the two is proper. This is, it's a tight rope walk. We try and do it to the best we can. Next, please. So we've been in existence for 7 decades, and I am very proud to say that in almost every decade of our existence as a laboratory, we have made some very significant contributions. I have tried to capture them in just one simple sentence. We do a lot of things in a decade, but if you ask me what is that one thing that the lab did in that decade, and I have tried to capture that. So in the 50s, I'll not read out all of them. Some of them, in the 50s and 60s, when as a country we were developing chemical industry, we made very significant contributions to basic, organic chemicals, basic chemical dye stuff, and so on. In the 70s, when the Indian patent law changed, and we and our sister lab in Hyderabad, IICT, where we played a very significant role in developing what is called today the generic pharma industry. And this is not what I'm saying. This is actually sentences like these have been uttered by none other than the CIPLA chairman, Professor Hamid. And so we take very pride in saying that we contributed significantly to the rise of generics. In the 90s, when India liberalized its economy, we were actually one of the first labs to file global patents, and some of our early US patents got licensed to multinational companies. That resulted into very large collaborations with multinationals, and one of the important, there were many, but one of the important outcomes of that was a large R&D center that GE established in Bangalore, which is today what is called the Jack Welch Technology Research Center. And it really came up because at one point of time, Jack Welch himself came to NCL and said, if they are so good, why don't we have a footprint in this country? And that resulted into that. But then, of course, as in the early part of this millennium, we worked also very significantly with Indian companies, because by then, multinationals were already here. They had their own R&D programs, and we wanted to make sure that Indian industry stays very competitive with them. So we worked a lot with, but of course, larger companies. I'll tell you a little bit about how we work with SMEs also as I go along. So next slide, please. As a laboratory, we belong to the CSIR, or Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. It is an autonomous society under the Ministry of Science and Technology. De facto president of this is the PM himself. Vice President is the Minister of Science and Technology. The Secretary to the Minister is our Director General who sits in Delhi. And each laboratory has a director. As NCL director, I have 6 scientific divisions and a few other things that support our activities. Next, please. We have always had, since beginning, 6 divisions. These are basically our competencies. So our scientists belong to one of these divisions. I will again not read all of them. I can make these slides available. But as we move along, in terms of execution of projects or what we do, it is really, the projects are multi-PI, multi-divisional, many times multi-laboratory, and not just CSR laboratories, but also with many R&D institutions, and of course with industry. So the execution of what we do is not done in silos. In fact, the execution is almost always very, very collaborative in nature. Next, please. You can skip that, thank you. Yeah, so this is our academic program. ACSIR is the Academy of Scientific and Innovative Research. It is the academic wing of CSIR. Our PhD students get degrees from ACSIR. As ACSIR, we offer core courses and electives to our students, but I believe that we want to give more sort of 360-degree education to our students, and therefore we have very special programs, training programs, where we teach our students communication skills, soft skills, organizational skills, teamwork, entrepreneurship, and also things like training in IP. How do you draft a patent? How do you read a patent? Especially how do you read in between lines? What is technology management? How do you draft an agreement with industry? Things like that. So there are many soft skills that we impart to our students, and I hope that those students then become more fit to work in industrial sector. Next, please. This is a very short list of many companies that we work with, and you can see that we work with both Indian companies and companies outside India. Next, please. We take great pride in saying that many of our scientists are excellent, and they are award winners, some of the highest awards that the country can offer, and also outside India awards many of our scientists have won. And I think I value this very much, because I believe that you cannot really develop good technologies if you do not have scientific leadership. So this is something, it's a value that we cherish and we build. Next, please. Now coming to what we do, which is more important, as a chemistry lab or a chemical engineering lab, we are of course focused on chemical industry. We look at what are those important problems that today's chemical industry, particularly Indian chemical industries, face. And increasingly it is about sustainability, so it's about climate change, pollution, it's also about healthcare. And one more important thing that I wanted to talk about in earlier session also is this +1 factor. The whole one of the things that happened in the pandemic is the supply chain, the global supply chains got disrupted, and increasingly every country, including us, are looking at self-reliance or Atmanirbhar as we call it. So decreasing over-dependence on imports is one of the most critical mega trends in the world, and this is also a need for the Indian chemical industry. Next, please. So with all that in mind, we have created a roadmap for what we want to do. There are only 4 pillars on which our roadmap is based. Everything that we do must have India relevance, so national context. We should leverage our strengths, and if they are not available in NCL, we should be open to leveraging strengths anywhere available in India, including, of course, industry. In every program that we do, there must be stakeholders connect, whether it is a ministry or industry or entrepreneurs or supply chains or whatever it is, every or policy think tanks. Every stakeholder must be connected into our program, and ultimately it is about creating impact. So the question is, who cares? Why are we doing this? So what impact are we going to make is the question that we must answer. So this is something that I am telling my scientists, that if you tell me this is what you want to do, please give me answer to all these 4 questions. And if I am not convinced, you are not doing this project. Okay? You can do something on your own, I don't mind, but a large ambitious project must answer these 4 very fundamental pillars. Next, please. Yeah, just go ahead. Yeah, so these are 7 theme areas where NCL wants to focus on in this decade, and it's because of many mega trends that are, of course, emerging. Clean energy is, of course, what I call C1 chemistry is essentially one carbon atom molecule. CO2 is the biggest in them. There are others. Circular economy, particularly related to plastics. Sustainable chemical industry, I'll talk because this is one sector where we work very closely with SMEs. Biotherapeutics, biomass, and agri-tech. So these are the 7 areas where we want to focus our attention in. And in each of those areas, there is at least one very large program that we want to engage in. I'll show you some of the glimpses of those kinds of programs. Next, please. The first one in clean energy, we are today considered by far in India as one of the best labs in hydrogen energy, and that is simply because we started working on hydrogen energy back in 2000. These are some of the risks we take. We do our own analysis and we say, yeah, this is the area where India will eventually realize that it's going to be important. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but R&D and technology development is a risky business. So hydrogen energy today, as you all know, the PM himself announced this from the ramparts of the Red Fort last Independence Day speech, and India is investing massively in hydrogen, and in every MNRE meeting, in every DST meeting, in every industry meeting, NCL is an integral part of those meetings. The KPIT bus that rolled out earlier this year was because of the fuel cell stack that we co-developed according to them. We talked about KPIT today morning. This is one project where industry and our lab co-invested, co-developed this technology, and now they are doing more work than we are. Okay, so this has gone into their translational activities. Next, please. This is the second technology. I think Sanjay here is well aware of it. Sanjay is deeply involved in this. We are trying to develop a molecule called dimethyl ether. And this is an interesting molecule because it's a substitute for LPG and diesel. Both of those fossil fuels are imported in this country to very large extent. LPG is also tied up with PM's Ujjwala Yojana, where we are trying to replace fuel, the agro mass as a fuel, which is not a clean burning fuel in rural kitchens, with more cleaner fuels, which is LPG. But that LPG gets imported today, and what we are trying to do is create process technologies for making this molecule DME, which can then replace up to 20% in LPG without changing anything. It's a drop-in substitute, no change in cylinders, no change in regulators, nothing at all. So this is a technology where we are now already running lab-scale pilot plants, and now we are working with large companies, large oil companies, to set up a much larger pilot plant within a refinery system where there is also a LPG filling station next to that refinery. We are also deeply invested into CO2. In fact, I'm hurrying this up because I'm leaving to Bhubaneswar to where we have a program with Jindal Steel. There's one company that emits 40 million tons of CO2 and very pure CO2. Okay. because nobody knows what to do with the CO2, right? So this is a big problem. Nobody in the world knows really what can we do with CO2. There are of course many technologies available. None of them are viable today, fundamentally because CO2 is a very inert molecule. You have to twist it quite a bit to make it, to convert it into something else. So this is a problem which is of very fundamental nature. Next please. Circular economy, I will not spend too much time on it. We have two programs on it. In the pandemic era, we started looking at the PP overalls, the suits and the masks and the caps, and they were burnt on a daily basis. In the second wave, just Pune city was burning almost 150 tons. We decided that instead of burning them, we can convert them into something more valuable. We developed the whole process technology around it, and now there is a startup company that is taking it forward, and we are looking at the entire non-woven plastic, which is actually thrown in landfills and burnt. We are converting them into more valuable products. The second thing we are doing is looking at pyrolysis as a technology. There are many pyrolysis plants, Prashant, you are aware.
Yeah, absolutely.
and in most cities the pyrolysis plants don't work, and we are trying to look at what technology interventions can we do to make many of these pyrolysis plants become a little more viable. Next please. This is one thing that I would spend a little time on. This is India is big in specialty and fine chemicals industry. In fact, 11% of industrial GDP exports, is contributed from this one sector, specialty and fine chemicals. Pharmaceutical is the biggest, APIs, but also agrochemicals and dye stuff and few others belong to this particular sector. This sector does lot of very nasty reactions, okay, and these are reactions done in what are called batch processes. Essentially, it's like kitchen chemistry. You have a vessel, you have paddles, you have stirrers, and you cook chemicals inside them. It's not safe. It's environmentally not benign, and this is also one of those technologies where NCL invested way early, almost 15 years ago, and we said that why should these reactions be done in batch processes? Can we not do them in continuous processes? You heard of one very nice example of a micro reactor or flow process to make jaggery today. This is basically the same family. Micro reactors or reactors like that, where instead of doing batch reactions, you do continuous reactions. We are again in India considered by far a leader in this area. We actively work with many pharmaceutical companies, but we also work with many small scale companies, agrochemical companies, dye stuff companies, and so on. In fact, our biggest worry here is that we are sitting on so much knowledge, we are sitting on so much technology, and because of the systems that we are involved in today as a government laboratory, our way to scale and speed is very limited. Okay, so my biggest worry is how do I bring the scale and speed to take this technology down, to industry and to markets. We are trying few business models. We're trying to create footprints in areas where the specialty chemicals industry is concentrated. For example, in Hyderabad there is a flow chemistry hub. In Vishaka there is a pharma city. In Ankleshwar it's a mecca of fine chemicals industry. We are trying to see if we can create a footprint in those areas and work with industry there to translate our technologies there and more quickly sort of outside the government systems. Next please. You can skip this. Yeah, I can skip that also. Interestingly, in the biomass area today, India is pushing 2G ethanol, as you all know, and a byproduct of 2G ethanol is lignin, and the 2G ethanol doesn't become viable if you cannot valorize lignin. So it's more problem is not the 2G ethanol, but what do you do with the lignin? And lignin is a very difficult molecule again. There's of course many technologies available, none of them viable today. So again, what is the technology intervention we can do to solve this very India-specific problem of lignin? Agri-tech, I will only tell you one thing. There are 2-3 things we are doing, but one thing which is interesting, it's a classic case where we don't do very much science, but the impact of what we do could be significant. We are looking at creating an Indian database for Indian honey. India produces 750 different types of floral honey, and the these are small scale industries. They have actually great export potential, but we cannot export that honey today because in outside India, especially in Europe, there is a what is called a European database. If your honey does not fall in that European database, you are not allowed to export it. Okay, so and to put the honey in that European database, you need a few things. One of them is a 400 megahertz NMR spectra. Okay, now we suddenly realized that we have three 400 megahertz NMR machines, and we said I'm going to take 20% of that machine time just to do this. So we are now working with Khadi Village Industry Commission (KVIC), where we and which through them we are connected to about 20,000 farmers, and we are collecting their honey. We are doing lots of analysis, including the 400 megahertz NMR. We are creating a database, and hopefully at some point of time that database gets integrated in the European database, the Japanese database, and so on. There's also a sidekick on this is that all the branded honey that we get in the market, we know exactly what is there in the honey. We have not disclosed any of that yet, but we know what goes in the honey without the honey. Okay. Yeah, next please. Yeah, there's some new innovations that we do, and I'll just talk about the picture on the left. This is the world's first continuous plant for making polymer, but a very, very, very special grade polymer. This is a process called anionic polymerization. For those who know a little bit about polymers, they will know. This is not an easy way to make very precise, that technology, the technique is not easy, but what we have done is this continuous flow plant, which is very, very unique. We are today making a polymer that goes in the defense sector for missiles and so on. But this is a platform technology, and it can help us do a lot of different, very specialty grade polymers. So we are hoping to, some of these technologies, we are hoping to eventually create startups around them. Next, please. I think this is important slide because I mentioned about TRL levels, and what I'm showing here is that from TRL 1 to about TRL 5 are points where we can come in, and we do come in, and right from identification of technology, ideation, looking at patent landscape, and looking at freedom to operate analysis, and then actually doing the science on the table, converting them into proof of concept, scaling up to lab scale, sometimes even pilot scale, are things that we can do. But real serious pilot plants, demo plants, and commercial plants is where we are unable to operate as a lab. Not because we don't want to do it, it's because our systems are such that we can't do it. For example, 2.5 tons per day dimethyl ether plant, I just cannot put it up in NCL. It requires safety considerations which don't exist in a government lab like ours. I don't want the plant to blow up, right? So it is this is the point where Indian industry typically says, if you are giving me technologies at TRL 9 or 10, I'm willing to license. If you don't have technologies at that TRL level, stay away. And I think that needs to change. Okay, either we need to create models which will allow that higher TRL translation, which are not in the government system. They must be outside the government system. They need not be in full private mode also. So this is a different model that one needs to make, and there are models available globally. Fraunhofer Institute, Catapults are excellent models available where this is done outside India. As a country, we haven't done it, and I think it's really required. Or industry invests early on, and I told you the benefits of doing that investment early on, right? So, and it has succeeded many times, but doesn't succeed all the time. So this is, I think, a discussion point that maybe more discussion debates can happen on this. Next, please. We have a wonderful startup incubator right next to NCL. It's today India's #1 bio incubator, and we are very, very proud of this. There are 13 companies that started from NCL which have now moved into the incubator, and two of them, one of them has already become very big, and one of them is now likely to get to that, of course not a unicorn level, but it's in Series B funding today. So we are very proud of what we created. This is back in early 2000 we created the first incubator, and now this incubator has become very, very successful. And one of my challenge as NCL director is how do I take more and more of NCL technologies into incubation? That is the challenge. We need more students and postdocs who have that entrepreneurial spirit, and to move away from lab and get into incubators. Next, please. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. This is my beautiful place. If you climb up the Chatushrangi hill, you will see this green oasis. So I welcome all of you to come and visit NCL and be happy to discuss many things with you. Thank you so much.
I would like to mention 2 points, which are related to NCL and relation with us. We started funding long back, not as a commission, but even the earlier version of it. And we had funded one project which became a big success, this Vincristin sulfate from Vinca rosea, taken over by Cipla. And that was the only project where state government got some revenue, about 15 lakh rupees in mid-80s, which was a sizable amount. So that was a big success. But there are a few other, but it generated controversy also with Auditor General saying, Accountant General saying that you have not charged enough. And then that litigation went on for almost 10 years. And then finally, a few more projects which were really in pipeline, we will stop there. So that was one thing, but that is the old relationship with NCL. But you mentioned about that in the good of the people. One incident I will tell you. Dr. Tirak, who was advisor with us later in 80s and early 90s, he told me this himself. He said, when 25th of or Silver Jubilee of NCL was going on, as the outreach program, they invited some important people from this town. And one day, one of the person was Vice Chancellor at that time, D.V. Poddar, Mahamodia Poddar. And then he came, and in the lobby, he saw all that, and then he read that. He didn't say anything. After going to his office, he said, I read it like this there. So what you have contributed to the good of the people? And then Dr. Tirak was not expecting that kind of question. He said he fumbled, but then he gave an answer that we do research, we generate technology, it goes to the industry generates value, and then that is economic contribution, employment generation, that kind of thing. But he said, I gave that answer, he said all right, he didn't comment. But after going back, whole night he couldn't sleep. He said, really, are we doing that? If we evaluate properly, I think we have not contributed enough. He didn't say only about NCL, but as a R&D system in the country. And he said that day he decided that he will do something good for people, and he started that Casford letter. But that's what he felt, that we have not done enough, although NCL performance is one of the best in the country.
Thank you so much.
Sir, I have 2 questions. One is, do you take up social projects? For example, let's say large projects, cleaning up of Mithi River using chemicals developed indigenously.
I don't know if we have done, maybe we have. I don't know enough about, because there's so much things happening in NCL all the time. I'm not aware of, but I can't think of one very large socially relevant project, immediate of social interest that we have done. We are engaged with them.
See, we think in terms of developing chemicals, but at least the cities in India are the worst places in the world.
Yeah.
So we need to think in terms of, using chemicals to improve the quality of life of people in the
Or
city.
not using chemicals.
Or not using chemicals, one of the 2 things.
Yeah. No, there are two things I can tell you right now, because I took over charge in April last year, and since then there are 2 things I can tell you. We've been working closely with our commissioner to look at the hyacinth problem. Okay, and this is the not use of chemicals, because there are chemicals available today which you can just spray and it burn the whole hyacinth, but it also destroys the aquatic life. Okay, so we have actually provided them data showing how those chemicals affect the aquatic life, and not just for one generation, but for generations together. So there's a long life effect of spraying those chemicals. So it's an easy solution to adopt, but not necessarily the most sustainable solution. So we may not be doing that project ourselves, but we provide sufficient inputs to make sure that the right technologies are chosen. The other example I can give you is during the second wave, and even today, there's a team that we have created in NCL, which has gone around across Maharashtra, and they certify the oxygen purity for all the PSA units that are set up in the hospitals.
We used it. It's very effective.
Yeah, and unless we say that we give a certificate that the oxygen is medical grade, which is 93% plus, it is not sent to the ICU. No doctor would do that, right? So we have done that as a service. Right in the wave of the pandemic, our team was going all across Maharashtra and doing this. Now I don't know whether it is a socially relevant thing. Is it a very large project? May not be, but we tend to do things which are socially relevant. But I agree with you, we should be doing more than that.
No, and I'm not pointing out shortcomings, I'm just inquiring.
No, but I agree. I'm happy to take criticism.
And the other question I had was, you showed that hydrogen powered bus.
Right.
Is it PEM fuel cell?
That's right.
Indigenously developed?
That's right.
I see, okay. And what is the source of hydrogen in that case?
So right now, see, hydrogen is a difficult, all energy transitions are difficult problems, okay? It's always a chicken egg story. If you say that, what is the point in having a fuel cell bus if there is no hydrogen, then you will never even develop that, right? So all these technologies will have to come up simultaneously, so that when hydrogen is available, there is a uptake of hydrogen also. Otherwise you will say, I'll develop hydrogen, who will consume it, right? So all these technologies have to come up together. So right now, to answer your question, I am agnostic to source of hydrogen.
Okay.
Eventually it has to be green hydrogen. Right now I am agnostic to it.
Okay, thank you.
Can you do anything for Nida River? So much of pollution from the...
You take it offline. NCL is not very far from here, so you take.
It's impossible, sir. Now
Talk.
the lands are not
I
recoverable.
agree. We do have a water treatment a group of scientists who look at various water treatment technologies, but there are many people who are doing that. So our uniqueness is what I'm looking at. Are we really unique in that? We are doing something that many people do. So
Yeah, sure. We'll move on to the next one. Thank you so much, Ashish. So we'll now move to the next section of this event. Let's put it this way. Let me request Mr. Anand Chodia, who is a member of our board as well as chairman of our food processing committee, to say a few words, and then we move to the other presentations.
I'll not take more than 5 minutes. Myself, Anand Chodia. Good afternoon, everyone. It's been wonderful listening to a lot of researches which are happening all over different research institutes. And Lele sir, I think he has struck the right chord from a research perspective. What really is also required that we translate research to entrepreneurship. Some of the earlier scientists spoke about researches, and they said the entrepreneurial part is not really has been equally explored, but that's where I think research institutes really need to focus. I worked on the research council of 3 CSIR labs in India, and a similar issue has been faced in many of the research oriented labs, that the entrepreneurial aspect or how the product will be marketed or what is a possible customer consumer gap and demand, we need to really understand. Second gap also always has been seen is what the regulations will say, FSSAI, FDA, Ayush Ministry, labeling laws, and then translating that research to an actual product launch becomes a very big hassle. Or some other issues which are always faced at research level is the proper shelf life studies, that how the product will be stable for a longer duration, whether it will change its taste, texture, efficacy during the time of the storages, and these become real hurdles for entrepreneurs then to take the project to make it a commercially viable and a successful case study. And that is many times becomes a reason for many industries not to value the research to take it up as a commercial project. They do respect the research a lot, that the research happened great, but I can't today convert it to any business model. So I urge this to all amazing minds and brains here, that please do consider the researches where the conversion to any business model can become very, very easily, where the law regulation aspect, which is very fast changing nowadays. If you see Ayush ministries, the activities in last 6 years and early 50 years are totally two different dimensions to that. You can see that fast the law is changing, even including the FSSAI norms. So that will impact many of the researches I heard right now, which were around nutraceuticals, functional foods, etc. So at Chamber, we have Food Industry Committee, where we can also jointly work with you, help you to work with experts with FSSAI experts to guide you to convert or make your research stronger from those perspectives, or also from the perspective of stability studies, if can be carried out somewhere, etc. We have a good ecosystem here. We are connected to NIFTEM, DFRL, CFTRI. We have their events happening here regularly. We had a CFTRI day, first time in the history of CSIR CFTRI, which was hosted first time in India at MCCIA 2 years back. And entire CFTRI, all the scientists we had here talking with food industry and entire ecosystem. So similarly, many other networks we have and contacts, we would like to connect the research to industry, not only to industry, but also these in-between agencies, to make sure the research is fully blossomed and easy for an industry to take up for. So that's where Chamber definitely can help and connect the dots for you all. Other than that, we have many events which majoritarily have been happening for industry. But today's session gives me insight that we can also have more and more events also with the research institutes henceforth. And one of the event, actually the upcoming event we are having, which is more like a curtain raiser, World Millet Summit, you can see it on the screen there. We are planning it in month of December, and 2023 has been announced as United Nations World Millet Year. So a lot of work India and many other global countries are doing, trying to work on millet foods as a, I would say that an ancient health solution system which is completely lost and devalued. And in Indian traditional food system, you know, we have been eating bhakris and lot of millet based diet, which is moved to now wheat or rice based diet, and a lot of health issues are around it. And now government is putting lot of stress. In fact, in PLI schemes of Ministry of Food Processing System, they have a special production linked incentive only for millet industries. 400 crores grant they have announced for millet industries in India today. So much focus across is going on millets. Similarly, after this we will also have a special workshop and a session on Ayu Foods, which is a new concept Government of India has now launched, called Ayurvedic food products. And many Ayurvedic herbs, more than 150 new ingredients are now allowed for food industry to use as food, and it has been declared by FSSAI. So much of new potential for new research, for all the research institute is happening, that any of you working in food industry, for example, Mahajani sir spoke about jaggery, and we as a company are actually developing jaggery with ashwagandha, jaggery with guel, which are now allowed in FSSAI. So suddenly a value added jaggery becomes a huge, great sweetener and healthy solution to entire world market. So lot of such new opportunities are coming as a concept of Ayu Foods, where research industries can play a vital role, and that's where Chamber wants to bring lot of people who are working, designing, creating, defining the law to talk with research institutes here. And that is one of the biggest takeaway I am also taking from today's conference and whatever I heard. And looking forward for your active association with MCCIA throughout next year, because we will have at least 3 to 4 millet summits consecutively, because it's a very vast topic, needs to be addressed from farmers level, traceability of the grain level, to value addition and market level. So entire value chain we want to address throughout the year, and we will be playing a vital role with Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Food Processing to deliver these things. So I request you that offline also I would like to meet to everyone. Some of you I met in the lunch break, but some of you I would like to meet and explain what Chambers Food and Agri vertical is trying to do for such great amazing stakeholders. And like Lele sir pointed out, with every research institute I have seen, there is tremendous knowledge and technologies developed, but the translation of technology to increase economy or industrial use, or like sir was pointing out, for benefit of people, how to do that is something we can address together. At Chamber we have a great connect with lot of CSR activities happening, where research institutes also can get connected to, like for social projects. For example, our own CSR works on waste management, sustainability, so that's where if any research is happening we can work. Like sir just pointed out one company called Zero Plast, and now it's in my mind to meet that startup and talk to them what they do really in plastic, because in food industry, pharma industry, plastic is a major problem with the new EPR. So like that, Chamber will add huge value to all the work industry is doing, and now I can correlate all the work the research institute is doing. So what sir pointed out, like how Fraunhofer or other successful models have been created to translate research to industry, I think Chamber would be the nodal point to translate research to the industrial level, and we will try to fill in the blanks. That's what my committee would like to do, to fill in the blanks for the research scientists quickly, to make sure the research is available for industries. Then later we can always call upon industries also to interact more and more with you. Thank you so much. I won't take much more time. Great
Thank
listening
you.
to you all.
Thank you, Mr. Odia. Now we move to the presentation part of the research and the technology service provider groups. Let me invite Mr. Ratnesh Srivastav, who is the CEO for TIH at the IIT Bombay, to make a presentation.
So good afternoon everyone. My name is Ratnesh Srivastav, and I am representing Technology Innovation Hub for IoT and IoE that is being hosted at IIT Bombay. First of all, I've been just trying to connect to the discussion which is happening since morning and the presentations which has happened. So I mean it is completely aligned to the work which Innovation Hub is trying to do, and I mean it is a great opportunity for me personally to listen to everyone, and also to present what exactly we are trying to do as part of Technology Innovation Hub. The points which have been discussed mostly about the translational research, the converting the research from lower TRLs to higher TRLs, the entrepreneurship network, the startup ecosystem, the human resource development. These are all the areas which we are focusing on, and we are very well aligned with the entire thought process which I have been hearing in this room since morning. So about Technology Innovation Hub. So Government of India had set up a national mission on interdisciplinary cyber physical systems that is being implemented by Department of Science and Technology. So I think Director NCL was pointing out the issues wherein there are some systemic constraints where the ideas at up to TRL 5, 6 and moving it up to the higher TRL levels. So that is what I think exactly the thought process behind setting up these TIHs. How these TIHs can work and bridge that gap that is right now existing between kind of moving these ideas from lower TRLs to higher TRLs. So technology innovations hubs have been, that's why it has been created as Section 8 company. It has been created as a not-for-profit. These hubs have been hosted within the premier technical institute. So 25 such hubs have been created across the country, and each hub is focusing on a particular technology area with a clear mandate to promote applied translational research and create human resource in that particular area, support startup and the other related ecosystem in that particular technology area. So TIH at IIT Bombay is focusing on Internet of Things as the technology area. So what exactly I mean our vision as TIH is, so we want to become the premier IoT hub. So when we say hub, it is and what exactly we want to do as a hub. So mostly the conceptualization of ideas, the system level implementation. Ideas for system level implementations are conceived, prototype, tested, and then handed over to the capable partners for commercialization and deployment in various industries. So exactly the gap right now which we have, that after coming up to a certain level, how we want to take it up. And since morning, I mean, Mr. Prasant also mentioned that, I mean, there is a need for involvement of industries from the very beginning of the idea, and Director NCL quite a few times also suggested that, and Professor Shah also mentioned from RGS CST side. So that is something which our focus area as well. And so what we are focusing on as an objective is translational research, so technology and product development in the field of IoT, building highly knowledgeable human resource. We also want to develop an ecosystem to support the commercialization of innovative solutions, and obviously we are looking at the collaboration across government, industry and academic systems. Then we are also focusing on creating a vibrant startup ecosystem for IoT, and international collaboration is another area where we have been focusing, and I have so one already we have done that collaboration in that direction. I will talk about it. And ultimately, since this is the government funded, so in all there is always a socio-economic impact, that is what we want to create. The other important thing with these innovation hubs which government has set up, that we have a clear mandate that for 5 years we will have government support and funding. In these 5 years we have to become self-sustainable. So that is also kind of a we are also like a startup, and while fulfilling all these mandates, we have to ensure that these activities, these work which we are doing has a truly sustainable basis, more from a commercialization perspective. So, so we have in broader IoT domain, we have further narrowed down, and that is again echoes with the thoughts which have been talked about here as well, that probably we should not try to do each and everything and try to focus on things which brings more value and more focused approach. So we have identified certain domains: agriculture, education, healthcare, industrial IoT, and defense and security. So that in that also we have further narrowed down the areas where we want to work with, but we are again open based on in these domains or other areas as well where we have an alignment with the core technology focus of ours. We would be more than happy to collaborate and work. Then we have more from a technology perspective also, we have identified areas in IoT. So like IoT captures the entire value chain, right from the sensors to network to the platform, then collection of the data, then applying AI ML on top of the data, applying analytics, drawing insightful inferences from that data, and then using that data for the betterment of the processes or the work which we want to do. So in each of these parts, we have identified our focus areas, and that's where we will like to kind of focus. Then, so we have again our activities. We majorly 4 pillars as we have identified for ourselves. One is technology development. One is innovation and entrepreneurship, human resource development, and international collaboration. In each of these pillars, we have certain outcomes which we want to achieve. Then there are certain programs which are focusing at different stages. As you can see in the presentations, we have mapped the programs at different TRL levels, and for each TRL level, we a group of TRL levels, we have programs that is focusing on that. And then the ultimate outcome, like in technology development, what we are focusing on, generating technology products and commercialization of technology. But the methodology which we are actually taking up, like we are taking up the basic research which is already happening. Then we are having support available through different government fundings for these programs. Then proof of concept, test bits, the mid TRL levels, and then ultimately the technology products. So that's where we would be working with the industry partners. And the major focus is on the technology products and all. So we have a kind of a funnel where the amount of funding is lesser at the lower TRL levels. It is at the higher TRL levels, but probably the funnel is more wider because we want to capture more ideas in terms, and then it can actually go narrow down as we move along to the higher TRL levels. Similarly, on the innovation and entrepreneurship side, right from identifying the ideas and supporting those ideas from different students and other technology enthusiasts who have certain ideas, we have programs to support them, like Entrepreneur in Residence, to organizing grand challenge and competitions. Then moving on to the POC and prototypes, we have programs to support at those levels, and then up to the market stage, where helping the startups to get the market access, programs focusing on the creating of the spin-offs, and accelerator programs more in terms of the mature startups who wants to have the market access and take it to the commercialization stage. That's where our efforts are focused on. Human resource development, again, right from offering fellowships to launching of these skill development programs, and then culminating into a job creation. So that is what we are focusing on. Even in this, what the approach which we are taking is different from the conventional fellowship program. So we are working with industries, we are trying to identify the problem statements with the help of industries, and then we are asking students to prepare a project along those problem statements, and then fellowship is awarded based on that the project proposal. And throughout this project execution, the industry is providing mentorship and technical support, and also access to their facilities in terms of, so that the students can also get a feel before actually getting into the industries how exactly things are working, and that is where. And these programs also we are creating treating it as a pipeline for creation of new startups.
Ratnesh ji, my apologies to interrupt. Can I ask a brief question?
Sure.
What part of what's happening at TIH is already A, implemented in the industry,
Right,
B, ready to be implemented in the industry?
right.
This is all very valuable, and we'll also keep the deck.
Sure.
But if you can please address that, that will be a lot more valuable while we are meeting you in person.
Sure. So, okay. So I think I will quickly. So, what we are trying to do is, so there are 3 different places through which we are trying to create this projects in terms of industry and academia collaboration projects. One is the industry requirements. So we are taking the industry requirements, and already in 3 areas we have launched these projects. One is agriculture. I will quickly talk about that. Second is education, and third is the defense and industrial IoT kind of a segment.
Each of these 3,
Yeah.
and let's make it a bit interactive.
Sure.
So that in each of these 3, have you already got the industry partners?
So some we have got and some we are looking, because we are just
In which
1 year
area
old. Yes.
have you got the industry partner?
So agriculture we have got some startups. So like in agriculture, if
No,
I
that's
can,
okay.
I
We just
can
need to.
quickly talk about.
And in the education and no, the details, right? Depending on which one is interested,
Yes.
would continue to do it with you.
Sure.
At a macro level, if we understand where the potential for interest is,
Yes.
then the relevant ones would kind of like connect with you and go to the
Definitely.
detailed
Correct.
part of it, right?
Definitely.
Because the details may not relate to everybody.
Right.
The macro metadata would relate to everybody. And hence, coming back to the question, in which areas are you still looking for industry partnership?
So agriculture is definitely one of our major focus areas. So we have for addressing the entire value chain right from.
In one line, how do you explain what exactly have you got in the agriculture sector where the exponential technology called IoT helps?
Yes. So one area is the I would say the soil nutrient management. We have got we are working with a startup. We are developing an e-agri station. So we are looking for more partners to join us in terms of the data which is coming from the soil integrating with the.
Got it. What is
climate
required there?
conditions.
What is the broad range of funding required for that?
So funding, it is more of a collaborative. We have our own funding
Okay.
from government.
Collaboration, what is required?
So the help we are needing from industries to kind of provide us the test beds. We have the technical expertise. We have the some startups also
Got it.
supporting, but that is when
So
we
here
are-
is a request to you,
Yes.
and the same request is also for others. If it's possible,
Yeah.
only if you think it's applicable and possible, if you put up a 2 to 3 minute video, not today,
Mhm.
and whenever convenient to you, which says exactly what it is,
Right.
what you are looking for,
Sure.
what we would be able to do is circulate it among not just 30 people gathered here, but the 3,000 members that we have.
Right.
And more than happy to connect them with you. Any one of you who talked today can put up, but not longer than 2 minutes, because that's the world we are living in anyway.
Sure.
Once somebody is interested in, can definitely spend many hours with you to understand further details about it. Is there any other area in the industry on IoT where you already have something that's working or is ready to work?
So the other which we are right now starting this project, it is more of a in the industrial IoT segment, where we are looking at monitoring the air quality and how to improve that air quality. So for that we are looking for more in terms of the industries who are more into HVAC, and so that is something smart building, green building, that kind of concept. So that is something which we are looking for industries to collaborate, other than the agriculture, which I already mentioned. So in agriculture also we are focusing on the drone, like spraying of the thing. So we have couple of partners. We are looking for more.
Thank you.
partners in that.
After this meeting, my colleague Sudhanva would introduce you to Shantanu Jagtap, who looks after agriculture sector,
Sure.
and also at some stage Mr. Pradeep Bhargava, who looks at CIA's the Green Building Initiative nationally, right? So happy for you to connect with them and figure out what
Sure,
next.
sure.
Is there anything else specifically that you would like to mention? Otherwise, we move forward to the next presentation and we'll share the presentation with everyone. The idea is not to rush.
Yes.
It's very important.
Yeah, yeah. No,
The
no,
idea is
got
just
it.
to get the essence of it and move
Yes,
forward.
yes, that's right. Yeah, so that is broadly I just wanted to. So more of industry connects, which we are looking at it. We have a good reach in the academic, we being part of IIT Bombay, but that is where we really wanted to utilize this platform to reach out to the industries, and these are the major focus areas. Where
Thank you so much.
2-3 मिनट का वीडियो बना
हाँ,
के
we
आप
will.
कर दीजिए. They will be happy to host it, right?
Absolutely. And we would proactively circulate it.
Sure.
While talking to you, this is the same appeal to everybody. But anything more than 2 minutes, and what format it is, my colleague Sudhanva will tell you. Anything more than 2 minutes, we just would not.
Sure, sure.
Right? So don't, yeah. Just send us what you can say in 2 minutes. We will make sure it reaches to 3,000 companies.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we move to Professor Santosh Narona, head of Tata Center for Technology and Design from IIT Bombay again, TCTD.
So this is to describe what's going on as part of the Tata Center at IIT Bombay. We received in 2014 a large grant from the Tata Trust, who have obviously a large presence in the social sector, who wanted us to think about potentially leveraging tech to solve some of their social science problems. And that's relatively new to an IIT as a theme. Of course, we do things for big industry, also increasingly the SME sector. But to look at what are probably the large set of wicked problems which require multidisciplinary thinking is also something that we traditionally do not do at an IIT. So it needed a new center itself, and it needed a new way of working. So what I'd like to spend time on is giving you a feel for the structure of how this goes about as yet another experiment. You heard about the IoT Hub, but this is also an experiment of sorts as we are trying to figure out how to engage with the larger society around us and tackle what are relevant problems. So the focus is on trying to work out a program which allows us to look at end-to-end development with impact in the social sector. So the two ends being precise definition of a need statement as to what ultimately allows for social impact, and the second end being a sustainable solution moving into the field. So working out a sustainable business model, if you want to call it that, but not necessarily constraining it as something which has to be for profit, because most of the things that we see around us, especially with the investments of the Tata Trust, have not necessarily been for profit interventions. And along the way, to do something which has not been done in the engineering curriculum, which is to bring in an element of discussion of both social science and entrepreneurship into what students conventionally see as core engineering coursework. So what we have therefore done is look at multiple verticals, the sectors that you see listed on the slide, and look to see whether we could develop research and educational activities to facilitate these. So structurally we have something called a virtual center within the IIT system, and that's because our intent is to recruit faculty and students from across the institute, and not in terms of single departments and skill sets limited to single departments. And as I said earlier, if we are to solve multidisciplinary problems, we need a range of people to come together to debate and ultimately implement solutions. So we do have an internal funding activity. We act as an internal seed funding agency, which allows for PIs to engage and define problems of their own and then come to us for funding. But what is also relatively unique to the IIT system was that for the first ever time we had access to translational funding, which meant that the moment we saw that something good was potentially happening, we had the ability to fast track it and scale up internally itself the implementation without dependency on a government agency for a larger grant to kick in. That problem with the larger grant kicking in is invariably that comes in with a delay, and then you lose continuity outright and the whole activity falls apart. We've set up a couple of courses called Pro Seminars, where there's a very large engagement with external stakeholders who come in and collectively allow us to debate challenges in the various sectors. A large amount of this is also needed because most engineers have no exposure to social sciences and the qualitative research methodologies that social sciences entail. So we've had to essentially pick up case studies and then systematically debate them as to A, what is the need, and B, what are appropriate solutions that you would then construct in tackling the need. And then to facilitate this, we have a technology and design lab to allow our students to come up with prototypes that they can then take into the field. We allow them to build solutions on their own, and this is across the entire institute. And we also have field activities where we take students out on a yatra so that they get a better understanding of what actually goes on in terms of large-scale implementation of socially successful solutions. For example, the Akshaya Patra program, where on the one hand it has a very wide reach, but on the other hand it's also very tech intensive. If you look at the tech behind what it takes, for example, to cater to very large numbers of people. Arvind Eye Care, where there's an attempt to come up with a very high quality service in what is a boutique health area. So with the next few slides, I want to give you a feel for some of our projects, and you've actually seen a couple of projects. The Jaggery project and the Cotton Stock project were examples of projects which were funded through the IIT Tata Center system. And in some ways, as I bring these up, I'll explain to you why they needed to come through our framework. So there's an element of science which we think needs to be done to even work out whether both the need and the solution are currently identified. And therefore, there is a category of problems that we have long felt should happen in sheltered mode within the IT system and not be rushed into incubation in a business incubator. Because the moment you come into contact with, let's say, an angel investor, you're going to get pushed around in terms of your vision of what you're planning on doing, and your solution will probably never see light of day. So in some ways, therefore, an attempt to let people have a longish rope within the IT system to see whether they can work out the essence of what ultimately works out to be a viable business model and then get into incubation just for business incubation purposes. So, in addition to things like the jaggery manufacture and the cotton stock solution, we have looked at things such as reducing the drudgery associated with deshelling of nuts, something that tribals do. We've looked at ways of using solar-powered solutions to improve seed storage. We've got now larger projects underway where we're looking at cold storage systems for storing produce and also transferring produce from farm to a middleman or all the way to a market even. And I'll show you one later which involves an IoT solution, but that's done in a slightly different context. We've had projects in the education space where we have looked at assessing kids. So this has come to us partly through a bit of a challenge where there are agencies such as Pratham and WPP and so on, which are evaluating the proficiency of kids when it comes to speaking English. And this is a very tedious process. And the question is there a business model to this? Can you evaluate kids in automated fashion? Can essentially machine learning come into this? And our solution, for example, has been to allow kids to recite paragraphs of text, and from this recitation, which you're recording, we're able to work out their proficiency directly and actually convert that into a solution which allows us to point out flaws in their understanding of the language and then to remedy it straight away. We've had a number of projects in the energy space. By the way, I should mention that we have already funded the order of 100 plus projects in the last 8 years internally. A large fraction of them are in the energy space, and these range from things such as creating sealants, custom sealants, puncture-proofing tires at a very low cost, coming up with things like printable silver paste. There's a very large import necessity for silver paste right now, which is needed at huge scale for solar photovoltaic industry. We've looked at the other end, we've looked at things to do directly with farmers, the treadle pumps, to see whether we can allow them to manually irrigate their farms. We've looked at coming up with better materials for both cooling roofs but also dampening sound. Because, for example, something which most of us take for granted but affects slum dwellers is anybody under an asbestos roof finds it a difficult experience during the monsoon, with the rain contributing to extremely high decibel levels. The other sector where we've had a large number of projects has been in healthcare, where we have looked at all kinds of things ranging from pushing systems which digitize solutions into the interior, so digital microscopy, digital pathology. Some of these start off as hardware projects, but then escalate into being solutions which provide entire services. So, and by that what I mean is we're looking at skilling technicians, because we recognize that some of this as technology cannot be deployed unless you upgrade the paramedics or personnel available to deploy them. And in further cases, we sometimes need to stitch together an entire ecosystem where there are experts and paramedics involved, the expert in a metro, the paramedic in the interior, and you're setting up a telemedicine service of a sort which doesn't already exist. So creating solutions which are novel in that sense. We have had things done on cancer screening, and I bring that up as a case study because this is an example of something where we have managed to avoid business incubation. So to talk about how there are alternate business models evolving all the time, and we're experimenting with this. This is an example of a project which could have business incubated. There was interest, commercial interest. But we find that leveraging CSR funding and keeping within this IIT system lets us control a vision for this, and that vision has to do with the fact that we're aiming for rural screening, which if you were to create a startup, the focus would be on urban cancer screening because that's where the profits are. We have created training material, so we've strengthened our teams to create training material because again, training and skilling people is turning out to be a bigger outcome than simply providing gadgetry alone. It's in some ways, we are creating a market. So by skilling people to do a particular service which they have not done before, in the process we are now enabling them in the use of certain technologies, and we're creating markets for ourselves. In the waste management space, we've also had projects with gasifiers and looking at managing garden waste. We've got a field unit which has been deployed in the IT campus system, also used to man one of our hostels in terms of providing water for boiling at large scale. We've had a project on looking at regenerating or reclaiming waste sand, which is rolled out in Kolhapur. So small foundries are using this. This is again with Professor Mahajani, who's with us today. We have a project on pyrolysis. And in the water sector, we've had a project looking at enhancing recovery of water. This is from RO systems. So RO systems end up throwing away pretty much 50% of the water as a reject stream. And we have looked into reclaiming some of that water using humidification, dehumidification process, which essentially mimics the rain cycle and humidifies a stream of air and then condenses it elsewhere, and in the process generates for us potable water. So we see that we can essentially reclaim close to 20% of that 50%, which otherwise would be lost, further improving on the economics of the generation of potable water. This is an example of a project where BIAF has come into the picture, and we have a village scale implementation about to happen in a village north of Bangalore. So in addition to these, and most of these things that I've quickly rattled off here, these are challenges, these are projects which have been identified by internal investigators, internal to the IT system. But we've increasingly come under pressure to engage with external agencies and work more in challenge-driven mode, given both our access to internal manpower, but also access to internal infrastructure. And so very quickly to give you a sense of how, therefore, these are undertaken. So this is a project with a startup in the agriculture space where we're looking at an IoT project trying to essentially improve the shelf life of onions in a warehouse by monitoring rotting with sensors which are essentially triggering off alerts in real time. We have disaster management projects, and this again is an example of how, as an institute, we cannot say that we'll only work with big industry or certain segments of stakeholders. We have to cater to all. So disaster management increasingly is something which is also asking for tech, and unfortunately nobody else finds incentive into working on it. So the university system kicks in and works on such segments. We're looking at IoT systems for flood monitoring with Oxfam, and we're looking at coming up with ways of improving housing solutions for flood-prone areas. Now, some of these will be solutions which we just hand off to a partner like Oxfam. Some of these are things which will end up, for example, a housing solution on the left is a policy outcome, where we work with the local stakeholders all the way till it translates into some formal policy document. We have done things during COVID in response mode, in emergency response mode, handling dialysis care for all of Mumbai. We've worked out oxygen regeneration solutions, trying to help out during the second wave when there was a shortage of oxygen and so on. These were solutions which were put together in relatively short time, something like 3 to 5 days, where a large number of faculty, students, and for that matter external stakeholders came together and collectively debated what could get done and how to implement something. So the first thing was something where BMC asked us to intervene and offer a dashboard to cater to dialysis patients. And similarly now we have a partnership with the BMC on large projects, more on the public health sector where we're doing neonate screening, where we set up a solution, and the intended exit for this is via some public-private structure that the BMC will man in the longer term. So these are interesting experiments, therefore, by which the IT system is trying to engage with society around us and trying to take some of our things forward. So I look forward to engagement with all of you. Glad to share more details about the solutions and others that have not been able to screen share here, but also to hear about where we can potentially connect with you and collaborate.
Thank you, Professor Narona. Now I'll request Dr. Saeed Ismail from SIFA Sanpra Systems to make his presentation. What we'll do is we'll take the questions in the industry perspective session, if that's okay with you.